everyone, it's Bree from Homemade on our Homestead. Today I'm going to show you how to make these really simple DIY bowl covers. You're going to need some fabric. Now again, you can use fat quarters, you can use scraps. It really is just going to depend on what size cover you're going to be making. That will determine what size or what amount of fabric you're going to need. You're going to need some scissors or a rotary cutter, some sewing pins, a tape measure or a ruler, a needle and thread, some kind of marking pin to mark your fabric, and some 1/4 inch wide elastic. So if you need to, go ahead and grab an iron, turn it on, and give your fabric a press. You're going to want to make sure it's laying nice and flat and there's no wrinkles. This will make it easier to cut and sew. If you don't need to iron your fabric, you can obviously go ahead and skip this step. So once you have your fabric that you're going to be using for your bowl covers all ironed and pressed, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take those fabrics and you're going to lay them right sides together. So for me, I'm only using a single print, but if you're using a coordinated print, you would just want to lay the pretty sides of the fabric facing each other. Make sure it's nice and flat. And the easiest way I've found to do this and to get an accurate measurement is to take the bowl or jar that you're going to be making a cover for, and you're going to essentially add 4 inches. You want 2 inches all the way around, which is going to add up to 4 inches total diameter larger. So I went ahead into my kitchen and found a bowl that was 11 inches in diameter because this one is 7 inches. So you're going to take that bowl, you're going to lay it down on your fabric, and you're going to trace around it. Now there's a lot of different ways you can do this. You could also trace the top of this bowl here, and you could take a ruler and just measure 2 inches all the way around it. So essentially you'd end up with 2 circles drawn on your fabric, and you would cut out the larger one. This method just seems to be a lot easier, it's a lot more efficient, and I found it's a lot faster. So go ahead and lay your bowl facing down, take a marking pen of any kind, and you're going to trace around that bowl. Now again, this is the back side of the fabric, so you can use just a regular marking pen. So I do have these fabric pens, they're called Freon pens, so you can draw the line on there and you can iron it off. Again, this is on the back side of the fabric, so it really doesn't matter what kind of pen you use. I would probably stay away from a Sharpie, as it will probably bleed through the fabric and then you will see it on the front. But a regular ballpoint pen would work. Go ahead and lift up your bowl, and now you can see the circle that you've drawn on your fabric. You can take a rotary cutter, a pair of scissors, and you're going to cut out both layers of fabric. If you prefer, you can pin it ahead of time just to keep them from shifting around while you're cutting, but it's really up to you. I'm just going to go ahead and put 4 pins in here. Now cut out your circle. So for this particular project, we're actually going to be using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I know a lot of us that do a lot of different sewing projects, quilting in particular, most of these seam allowances you're going to be using are 1/4 inch. For this project, it is a 1/2 inch because you're going to need a channel to which you can thread your elastic through. So let's head over to our sewing machine and let's get this sewn up. All right, so now we're at our machine. Our machine is threaded. Again, this is where you can get creative. You could use a coordinating thread or a thread that matches, which is what I'm doing today. And I have everything ready to go. So again, using that 1/2 inch seam allowance, we're going to go ahead and we're going to stitch all the way around, leaving about a 2 or 3 inch opening. This is going to be to turn our project right sides out. All right, so make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end of your line of stitching, and let's sew around here. Now you're leaving an opening in your project so you can turn it right sides out, so you can really leave this opening as large or small as you want. I found that about 2 inches is enough for me, but some people prefer a 4-inch opening that they can really put their whole hand into to turn your project. So once you have this sewn and you've left your opening, you're going to go ahead and turn your project right sides out. Once that's done, you can take a turning tool or a pencil or whatever you have, and you can kind of use it to push those seams out all the way around your bowl cover. All right, once this step is done, you're going to head over to your ironing board and you're going to ease those seams out and press this nice and flat. So before you start ironing, you can go ahead and again take that tube turner or whatever kind of turning tool you're using just to press out those seams. Now the easiest way I found to do this next step before we sew and make the channel for the elastic is to actually take that edge that you're going to have to hand sew shut and kind of turn it under so it's lined up the way you want it, and then give it a press. This is just going to make it easier to hand stitch it because you're going to see exactly where you need to stitch. Get those ends laying down really nice and flat. Like that. Now that we've finished pressing our bowl cover, we're going to head back to our machine and we're going to sew another 1/2 inch from the edge all the way around. Alright, so for this sewing step you don't really need to pin your project. Now if you feel better doing that, you are definitely welcome to do so to keep the fabric from shifting, but after you've given it a good press, I found that these really do lay pretty flat. So again, we're going to go ahead and we're going to sew a 1/2 inch all the way around the perimeter of the circle. This time, however, we're going to be completing the circle. This is going to give us that channel for the elastic to rest into. Make sure you backstitch at the start and the stop, and let's get going. Go ahead and clip your threads. So for this next step of the project, you're going to need either a safety pin or a bodkin and your piece of 1/4 inch elastic. So let's go get the elastic cut so we can thread our bowl cover. Alright, so for this part of the project, you're going to need your 1/4 inch elastic and a ruler or a measuring tape. So the beginning diameter of my bowl cover before I started to sew was 11 inches. So you're going to take that diameter and you're going to subtract 2. So my piece of elastic that I need to cut for this particular bowl is going to be 9 inches. So again, you're going to take that beginning diameter of your fabric that you cut and subtract 2 inches. This will be the length of the piece of elastic that you need to cut. Alright, so now you're going to take your bowl cover, your piece of elastic that you cut, and a bodkin or a safety pin, and you're going to thread your elastic through that channel. Now this part can be kind of tricky because this elastic piece is really small. You obviously want to kind of hang on to the opposite end so it doesn't get lost inside your bowl cover. Try to keep that elastic as flat as you possibly can when you're threading this through. And this is where I just hold on to the elastic and kind of even out the scrunched up fabric. You're going to take this over to your machine. You're going to lay this piece on top of this one, making sure again that they're not twisted. And you can straight stitch, zigzag stitch it, or whatever you want down the elastic. You're just going to want to back stitch this quite a bit to really reinforce that these two pieces don't come unhooked. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we're back over at the machine. I'm going to go ahead and tack stitch and back stitch in quite a few different places, maybe 3 or 4, to really make sure that these pieces of elastic are sewn together. Again, you can zigzag stitch this, you can hand stitch it if you want. Whatever works best for you is fine. All right, here we go. Now that these elastic pieces are stitched together, go ahead and cut your threads, and you can gently ease your elastic inside your tube here. Kind of stretch out your fabric so it's even on all the sides. And there we go. It's a good idea to take this cover over to your bowl and make sure it's going to fit, because at that point when you stitch it closed, you can't take the elastic out and redo it. So that's usually what I do. I've already made a couple of these, so I know they're going to fit, so I'm going to go ahead and stitch this up. And there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can whip stitch it by hand with a needle and thread, or if you don't mind having an exposed seam, you can also take your sewing machine and sew it closed, and that's what I'm going to do today. I'll show you a picture of the other one that I hand stitched. So it's really personal preference on how you want to close this opening. So make sure if you're using your sewing machine too that you're really careful not to sew onto that piece of elastic that's in there. You're really going to want to stay as close to the edge as you possibly can. And there you go. So go ahead and trim up your threads and we can go try this on our bowl. So now that we've just finished our bowl cover, let's go ahead and see how it fits. It should stretch pretty easily, but fit very secure. And this one fits absolutely perfect. So I think this is gonna look great in my kitchen. So I hope you guys enjoyed this really simple project for today. Let me know in the comment section down below if you've gifted these before or if you've made them before and have a tip or a trick for doing this a little bit easier. And I'll see you guys in my next video.